coming up on this episode of the Spiro Podcast.
So if you're thinking about expansion, how do I go? Where do I go? You got to figure out where you're at right now. If you don't know where you're at, please do not try to go somewhere else.
Welcome to the Spiro Podcast, managing your real estate photography and videography business. With your hosts, Todd Kivimaki and Craig Magro.
Hi, and welcome to the Spiro Podcast, managing your real estate photography and videography business. Spiro is a software platform. You might have heard of us before. It's designed to help you manage your day-to-day business, but even more importantly, help you scale your business. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about this week is the foundations for scaling. And some really good information that Todd's going to be sharing with us. And speaking of Todd, welcome to the podcast, co-host, owner, and founder of Spiro, Todd Kivimaki.
Hello, it's fabulous to be here and excited about this topic today. It is kind of the idea of why we started this podcast. And it came from a question, a user question, or a listener question. And excited to share that today. I thought about it a little bit after I had the conversation with this individual. This individual emailed in and said, hey, can I just pick your brain? We have this question. And so we took a call. It was a great call. And then I thought about the topic a little bit more. I thought, there might be some nuggets in here for you all today. Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about, how to grow business, how to approach sales and consulting and things like that. But I think it's going to touch on some different things this week and have some good conversation. Todd and I were talking before the recording of the podcast here, just about our own experiences and, how would we do things differently? And, it's going to be a good conversation this week, Todd. I'm looking forward to it.
It will be.
So, all right. Well, before we dive into that, we always like to give you guys some updates on Spiro. So, Todd, what's going on with the software?
Yeah. So you would have just received a few new updates with reshoots, the On My Way button, and pulling reports for a year. We're working on video hosting where we're going to put that through, streamlining a couple other processes. So all good things coming. There is the feedback board in the upper right-hand corner. So click on that inside of Spiro and let us know what you want. We do it. We honestly do. It's like it doesn't fall on deaf ears. We do it. If you look at that feedback board, the top cards, we have been just crossing them off. So we love your feedback. We really do. This is one of the most enjoyable things about this experience and is talking with all of you and getting to know all of you. And I want to say thank you to all of you as well. We looked at numbers. We have 1 year of reporting numbers with Spiro of when we are tracking in this new reporting system. And 1 year ago to today, we have done 16x in our size of what we've done. So I'm so blessed for that. And thank you for all the support and the ride. It's been crazy to be on. So thank you for that.
Yeah, truly humbling.
Yes, incredibly humbling. Yeah, I don't want to downplay that, but yeah, super, super appreciative. If Spiro works for you, can I just ask that you tell others, maybe a quick post? You don't need to go shout it everywhere, but if you see something online and if somebody asks about a delivery software and you feel one way about Spiro, please, if you post it, it helps us. Mm-hmm. And honestly, it helps us in a way that as we grow and scale, we have also scaled the team. So there's new names and new faces, and it just gives us more capacity and allows us to grow into more capacity to serve you better.
For sure. It was kind of funny, Todd. This morning I was looking through one of the Facebook groups and they were asking about, a software company and asking about a particular company. And there wasn't a ton of responses yet, but our name wasn't in there. And I so bad wanted to mention our name, but we try to respect the rules of not doing self-promotion. So we ask you if you would, mention Spiro as people are looking for solutions, software solutions to help them, manage and grow and scale their business. So thank you to those of you that do that. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah. And just to be transparent, because I'm all about transparency, we want to grow more because we want to bring on one more senior engineer. Okay. We already have a couple engineers on the team, but we want to bring one more on, and that will directly relate to more updates, and faster updates for you, bigger updates, things like that. So that's our goal. We want to bring you those features. Heck, I want them for my own company. We want them, Craig and I want them for WOW.
Yeah.
We use this every day. So
Right.
that is just transparent. That's what we want to do. We want to scale that revenue a little bit more so that we can add on, and we want to keep going.
Yeah. And I get to use Spiro on both sides of the experience of a real estate photography company. So I'm both a photographer. So I'm using the photographer portal to check into jobs and give updates and whatnot. So I get that side of the software, but I'm also a business development specialist. So I get to use the reports and metrics and, go into the orders and be able to do all of that. And it's fantastic to be able to respond quickly to clients' needs with a software solution that is just so streamlined and designed very specifically for what we do. So yeah, we're using this ourselves. I use it every day.
On a quick little pivot, Craig, just to mention, this is launching pre the Vegas convention. So just want to say myself, the team will be there. Craig is not going to be able to make it this year, but myself, Shannon and Nick and Jess and Steve will be there. So please come find us. We love to talk to you. I want to take a picture with you. I want to hear about your business. I want to hear about your life. So come and find me. We'll be at both conferences and the 12th through 16th in Vegas.
Todd, I just had a goofy idea. I don't even know why this popped into my head, but I can't be there. But could I send with you like a cardboard cutout, and you can just put the cardboard cutout of myself in the booth?
Yeah, we could put that up there. We could put you in the back. Yeah. Do you have I want a life-size cardboard cutout though.
I don't. I could work on that.
I think I have. I think from the Star Wars movie, I think I have a Chewbacca cutout, maybe at home from when I was a kid. We just paste your face up on there,
right? And the edited version with the
face tattoos,
right? The face tattoos. Mm-hmm. That might be a draw to bring people in. Hey, I'm going to get the face tattoo picture with Craig.
Yeah, maybe we'll let people draw a face tattoo on you at the conference.
Okay, I'm sorry. This got weird real quick. I'm usually not about anyway. Okay. Should we dive into our topic?
Let's get it going, yes.
Before this goes totally off the rails. All right. So talking about the foundations for scaling your business. And you might be the person that says, yeah, but I don't really want to scale that big. I was kind of in that camp myself with my own business. I liked the more boutique approach. However, even with a boutique approach though, Todd, I'm going to go back to when I first started my business. I figured out trying to do everything by myself was a no-go. There was no way I was going to be able to run that business to actually support myself, because I could only do like 2 shoots a day, then go home, edit, try and turn that around in one business day. And just, there was no way. So, you and I talked and you introduced it didn't even have a name yet, but the software that would allow me to scale my business to the point where once I started using it, I was able to start doing 6 and sometimes 7 listings a day. Mm-hmm. That made it feasible for them to support myself and my family with this business that I had just launched. So even if you're a boutique type of real estate photography company, you need something to help you manage and grow your business and scale. So that's what we're going to talk about, is what are those foundations? Where do you need to start building and growing your business? So Todd, I don't know exactly where you necessarily want to jump this off at, but let's dive into it.
Yeah. So I like I mentioned at the top of the show, I had the listener emailed in and said, hey, really like to talk to Todd, and the team connected me and we had a conversation. And this couple was in business, I believe, for about a year, and they were having about their best month yet. And I think they were around 14K.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, really dynamic husband and wife team, a younger family. So I had a 2-year-old, and they wanted to talk about scaling. And they said, even in the email to me, that they were obsessed with scaling and wanted some insight from me about how we scaled. And so one thing that I remind everybody is, I've done this for 20 years now. So yes, we do upwards of 13,000 shoots a year and millions of dollars in revenue. And we have a large staff and a very large photography team. And we have systems and processes, and we have buildings, and we have all of that. But it took 20 years 20 years is a long time.
Yeah, it is.
So just that's the perspective that I want to try to bring today, to be my 20-year-old self and go, wait a minute, let's look back. So, but that kind of set or that got me thinking about the topic a little bit more. And, one thing that I wanted to start the conversation off with was the idea of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
How clear are you on where you are going? I had a coach give me the analogy of, where is the ship headed? And the ship's headed, if you make a lot of little minute steering changes, you could make enough in the wrong way that the overall course of travel is affected in a way that you don't realize it.
Right.
If you look down at your feet and walk, well, one, that's not a great way to walk. And none of us walk like that, right? Because you have to look ahead to see which way you're going. And if you're not clear with your goals in your business, then you're literally looking down at your feet walking. You might just be walking yourself in circles, or a way you don't want to go. And this was one thing that, as historically, I have not been great at, is clarity of direction. And I knew I wanted to scale. I knew I wanted to go. And sometimes my lack of clarity just allowed me to put my hands over my eyes and just go. I call it my stupidity. And it worked. Sometimes it didn't work. And that is what I want you to first start off with. Like, if you're like, hey, I really want to scale, I want to ask you a few questions. Like, are you sure? You're like, I'm not saying that's admirable. That's one of our goals too. Mm-hmm. Growth is fun. I think most people would say growth is fun. And another thing there is you have to define growth. Because even in your example, Craig, of wanting to be more boutique, there was growth, I'm sure, that you were doing every day. It didn't mean you were going to add 10 people to your team, but there was growth.
Right.
What ways would a boutique, you were growing in what ways?
Well, I mean, I was growing in number of clients, obviously, but I was growing in experience, learning things that I had no way of knowing except going through the process. I was growing in how to interact with clients, what made me different than other photography companies out there. I
would say your efficiency. You mentioned your efficiency.
Yeah.
You were getting your time back.
Right. And time was huge, because I came from, I don't know if it's too early to talk about this or not, but that efficiency of time was huge, because I came from a career where I was managing a radio station. And when I own something, whether I literally own it or not, but when I'm in charge of something or have responsibility for something, I go all in. And when I was managing this radio station, I felt the burden of the leadership, the burden of the success of that radio station. And this was, oh boy, how long ago was this? 2012, I think it was. So my family was young. My oldest was only about 2 or 3 years old at the time. And he's 19 now. Man, I feel old. Anyway, but I dove into leading that radio station both feet in. I jumped in, and I was putting in probably 70 hours a week. Now, wow. But for some people, they're like, 70 hours. Yeah, that's what you should be doing as a leader. Well, maybe for seasons, maybe for certain times where you have a lot going on, but I made it a rule rather than an exception. And Todd, I will tell you that giving all of my time during that time was the absolute worst thing I could have done for my family. It was the hardest time on my wife and I's marriage. It was hard on my relationship with my son. And I think it had an impact on his perception of nonprofit and ministry type work, because it was a Christian radio station I was leading and managing. And I think he got a little bit of a negative view of what ministry work was, because Dad was never home. And when Dad was home, he wasn't home, because I was thinking about work and what still needed to happen. Right. So I think in starting my own business, I thought back to that time of leading the radio station, and I thought, I don't want to make the same mistake in my management of my time that I did when I was at the radio station, but I still have the onus of ownership, or the responsibility of ownership and providing for my family. So how do I balance this where I'm not throwing myself in as much with my commitment of time, but still make enough to survive financially, to take care of my family? I mean, those are real questions we all deal with, but it's easy to trade the time for the money and just have that hustle. As Americans, especially, we just have this independence mindset where it's all on us. I'm going to make this happen by myself. And this hard work ethic that, that our parents taught us and whatnot. And that's how I was wired. My dad put in a lot of hours. That was the example I saw. And that was what I was taught. You got to work hard. You do have to work hard. I'm not saying you don't work hard. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm rambling right now, but that growth in mindset of maturing and realizing is not all about throwing in all with your time. There's a balance.
Yeah, you said something there that really resonated with me is, that when you were home, you weren't at home.
No, I wasn't.
And that's the idea of, and I see myself many times throughout the years of not being present when I'm at home.
Yeah.
And your spouse will pick up on that. Your kids will pick up on that. And just be aware of it. So I say this from a place of love in my heart to all of you out there. Just be aware of it. And if you're like, hey, that's not me, just examine it one more time and just make sure. It might be worth asking your spouse, hey, am I present? Do you feel like when I'm home, you have my attention, that I'm here for you and supporting the family? And your question might be a little bit different if you're in a different stage of your life. There's the idea of being clear, is starting with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. And that is the same idea of not looking down at your feet while you walk. But if we start with the end in mind, the perspective changes a little bit. I had a coach say this, give me this analogy or give me this line once. And I wrote it down. I'm sharing it with you all today because it really struck home with me. But when you're young, you'll trade all of your time for money, right? You'll hustle, you'll grind. You're trying to get to 10K, 14K, 50K, 300K. You're trying to get there. And the time is indifferent to you because you're young, because you have it. However, when you're old, you will trade all of your money for time. Think about that. When you're at the end of your life and you know that your days are limited, you'll trade everything for more days with your family, more good days with your friends. You'll trade everything. And I think life is just so interesting. I think about things like that. My mind begins to sometimes do like this endless loop where I think about that. It's just fascinating. The difference. Think about it. 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s. And if you're building, you're focused. You're like, Todd, I'm clear on it. I'm going to build this thing. But if you're trading your time for just that money, that's why I want you to start with the end in mind. What would your 70, 80, 90-year-old self want? And that's such a conundrum, Craig. Like that question doesn't even make any sense. How do I know what my 90-year-old self wants? I'm going to be old and angry.
I'm going to be yelling at kids to get off my lawn is what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, but isn't that just so crazy how life can be like that?
Well, I'm thinking about my father-in-law right now, Todd. You know Phil.
Yes.
He's a retired executive, did very well in life, very generous guy. Look, one of the most generous people I know. And the last 5 years, especially, I would say he's been retired for quite a few years now. But the last 5 years, especially, He has just stressed so much how much he values the time with us as his family. And I mean, they'll invite us over for dinner and we'll just go. We only live 10 minutes from them. So it's kind of, it's convenient. We get to see them quite a bit. But we'll just go over to join him for dinner. And every time, no joke, he will make the effort to thank us for coming to eat dinner with him. We're like, you don't need to thank us. He said, yes, I do, because I value the time with you. And I wish I would have, he has made the comment before, he wished he would have realized that sooner in life, because he put in a lot of hours. He was, he was a very successful executive. But he's like, I don't need things. So, Christmas time, birthdays, it's not about the stuff. Don't worry about a gift. He's not concerned with that. He just wants to spend time with his daughter, with his son-in-law, with his 2 grandsons. And just watching him express that and seeing the time that he takes with friends, with other family. I really admire that. It's, it's not that we don't try and build something good in our businesses, because we do need that income to be able to live on and to hopefully pass on to new generations. But how much? And Todd, do you mind if I share a scripture that has been kind of foundational in my life?
Please, I'd love it.
Again, most of you know we have a faith background. We never try and push that on anybody, but this is core to who I am and what I learned, what I've been learning, through my career. And it comes from the book of Proverbs, chapter 30. And the writer here, starting in verse 7, says, "Oh God, I beg 2 favors from you. Let me have them before I die. First, help me never to tell a lie." That's interesting. In a culture that is all about, look at our political scene, right? Anyway, I'll stop there. Second, now some of you might push back on this, but this has struck me deeply. Second, give me neither poverty nor riches. Give me just enough to satisfy my needs. For if I grow rich, I may deny you and say, "Who's the Lord?" And if I'm too poor, I may steal and thus insult God's holy name. Now, the one pushback, and I think God makes exception for this, not to get into preaching mode, but I can't help it. God does give us the ability to earn wealth. It says that in the book of Deuteronomy. And he does give the gift of giving to some individuals where they're just very generous people and they're able to fund some incredible work in this world. I think my father-in-law is one of those guys. He just has this generous spirit and this gift of giving that goes beyond what many people have. And God has blessed him financially, right? So it's not about you can't be rich, but why are you pursuing finances? Why is that important to you? And I'm kind of the mindset where that, Todd, this is where you and I have a little bit of a difference. I think you're kind of like my father-in-law in that you have a scaling a growth mindset, and mine was a little bit smaller. And I'm kind of like, God, I don't need great riches to be happy or content. But I also don't want the struggle of financially being poor all the time and under that anxiety and that stress. So it's finding that balance. What the why of it ties into your clarity. What's the purpose of your growth mindset? What's the purpose of your scaling?
And the purpose all comes back to tying that together for you. And I think I've shared on the podcast a time or two that I am motivated by money. When I look back over the course of the 20 years, why did I start something? Why did I sell friendship bracelets on the bus when I was 5? Because I wanted to make money. Why did I sold glow sticks at football games. I sold CDs. I sold crafts. Every time I started so many little businesses in my life because the goal was to make money. And I took a personality profile test not too long ago. Well, this was a few years now, but I was reading the results and I was like, oh, this sounds terrible. Like I hated, like, wow, this is terrible. Like I struggle with it. And we're in a small group and I had shared that, like, I was struggling with this idea of like, why am I so focused on money? Like that is terrible. And the people in the group, they just brought up the point that it's okay to have money and to make money. And by no means am I rich. I mean, I am very blessed. We live a good life, but we are still working every day, to make sure that we can, provide for the family. But it's in what your goals are with those intentions. And that really made me realize, Craig, I'm going to go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the quote of a quote. Okay. So I love the quote, Proverbs, smartest man ever, with quoting that. Now I'm going to go way different here. I'm going to quote the notorious B.I.G. Okay. And this is something this is way different. Y'all are going, Todd, where are you going with this?
I'm saving this podcast forever.
But notorious B.I.G. said, the more money you have, the more problems you have. Something like that. That's in a very kind of dorky kid saying, but listen to the song. The more that you have, the more problems that come.
There's truth to that.
And that's said way better by, Jesus in the Bible, many people in the Bible. But I just wanted to give the opposite ends of the spectrum, like Biggie Smalls. He said that, and it's so true. I think about that. I think about when I'm looking for things, or like, oh, this would be the next greatest thing, and what can I buy, and I think about that. Like, why do I want this? And when my focus is on consuming, that's when the idea of being too focused on making money can be a problem, at least from my experience. I know in life, when my focus is on serving and helping others, that's when I feel good.
Yeah. Yep.
It's like you buy something, it's like, oh goodness, like, yeah, it was cool, but now I have to take care of it. It needs oil change, it needs this, it needs that, it's like, holy cow, like how many things, and now I'm just maintaining all of these things. This needs mowed, that needs trim, this needs service, winterized. It's like, wait a minute, Todd, what are you doing?
Yeah. Wouldn't you rather spend that time with people you love?
I mean, we're going extremely philosophical today, but I just truly from the bottom of my heart want to stress this is something I wish I would have had when I was 20 or 30 or even 35 or last year at 40. It's something that almost you can't understand in your youth.
I didn't think that deeply about it when I was younger. I was just looking at my account balance and going, God, we're going to go broke here. Yeah. And you hustle, you work hard. There is a place for that. We want you to understand there is a place for that. We are called to work hard, right? We do have responsibilities, but it's so easy to lose sight of the why. Key in on the why, get your clarity.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So on the back of that, Craig, so there's two different mindsets that we all can have. We can have either an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset as B. It's crazy how your perspective changes with each of those mindsets. Let's start with scarcity. Think of that fight or flight mode. Craig just mentioned it. Oh my goodness, I don't know where we're going to get money from. But he had a whole bunch of time, as opposed to the flip of that. If you have an abundance mindset, you're like, wow, I have all this time. What can I go create? There's a ton of opportunity out there for me. So what kind of mindset do you have? Do you have an abundance mindset or a scarcity mindset?
Todd, let me ask you this question. Do you think that ties into like your self-perception? What you think about yourself even? Because let me give you an example. You said you were out there selling glow sticks and friendship bracelets and just the idea you had some. Sounds like you were a pretty confident kid. I was.
Okay.
I think there's a tie in there. You had some natural confidence in yourself and you were out there, all sorts of ideas. You didn't see the limits. I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here. I grew up the nerd. Okay. I was the kid that was picked on a lot in school. I was the band geek, I was the smart kid, the nerd. I was the church boy. I got picked on a lot and I did not have really hardly any self-confidence. And I never dreamed about entrepreneurship or business opportunities or how I could succeed in business. I was constantly doubting myself. And so I had a scarcity mindset about myself, but also how can I be successful? So man, we really are going philosophical, aren't we?
It's good though.
It does go back to mindset. And I'm gonna pull in one more verse that has been foundational in helping me transform my thinking. It comes from Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your ancestors as it is today. God gives us the gifts and the talents that we have. And my problem is I didn't recognize that. I didn't recognize that God had given me gifts and talents. And instead of listening to him and what his truth about me was, his purpose for me was, I was listening to everybody around me. Craig, you're a nerd. You're a geek. You don't have any gifts, blah, blah, blah. Todd, on the other hand, had an inherent confidence in himself, whether he recognized it was, God or not. I don't know. We've never actually discussed that, Todd. But if you understand that you have value, you as a person, even as an adult listening to this right now, maybe you struggle with confidence issues. You have value and purpose. You are created with purpose. We truly believe that. And so God gives every one of us gifts and talents that can be used for some incredible good in this world. And so you just got to shift your thinking and key in on that clarity that Todd has talked to us about. What is the purpose of your life? What can you do with the gifts and the talents that you have? And maybe you have great gifts and talents for starting a business, but you've held back a little bit. Don't hold back. You have incredible purpose and value. The impact you can have on realtors in their day-to-day stresses. You get to be a voice of encouragement in the life of another business person.
And think about not only that, but the tools. If you want something even a little bit more granular, is just the tools that you can provide them. We had a story. I heard a win this week of an agent that we were working with and has worked with us for quite some time. And she was listing a property on a lake about 45 minutes away. And she happens to have a place on the lake, but she competes with agents from bigger cities, much larger cities on the lake, and they have places on the lake too. And she happened to get it. And I think it was a 1.1 or a 1.4. And she told us she attributed it to the fact that she used our media, and she thinks that was what closed it, was the fact that she was going to do the photos, the video, the drone, and how she was going to market the property. Those are all just the little wins where take those and don't take them for granted. I think the world wants us to push those down and say, oh, who cares? Everybody's doing that. No, not everybody's doing that. You can impact the world in a positive way, having that abundance mindset and just keeping those thoughts high. A saying we use around here is keeping your thoughts above the line, above the line. And that's positivity. That all goes to abundance. And for you pessimists out there, I know what you're saying. Oh, Todd, but I would just plead with you, if you see it as the glass being half full, the world changes. It really does.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I've had a couple of meetings with new clients this week that I'm shifting. The season's slowing down, so I'm shifting more into my business development mode. And this year, I told Steve, our director of sales, I really want to focus in on education for both our current clients and new clients on how to best use the services that we've got for them, because I want them to be successful. I told the one realtor was it 2 days ago, she just got licensed in April and already has had 3 listings. But she talked a little bit about the challenge of, a marketing budget and just starting off. And I said, yeah, I remember that myself when I started my business. I was afraid to spend money, but I realized after buying my drone, I need to spend money to make money. And she starts shaking her head. Yeah, I realized that. I said, that's where I like helping new agents. And yes, you do have to spend some money. It's a little scary at first, but the investment you make in your marketing with all these extra tools that we include beyond just the photos and video, the marketing toolkit, and, we went through that, you have a leg up on the other new realtor that is afraid to spend the money in moving your business forward and getting those higher tier listings. Your goal is to earn more, right? And she's, well, yeah. And it was just awesome to be able to help somebody. And yeah, look at it. You might have the same services of another real estate media company, but it's all in how you present it and really wanting to help your client win. You're not just a photographer. So yeah, keep that positive mindset and the clarity of what's the goal of your business. Mm-hmm. Obviously, yes, we want to make money, but if you have a servant mentality of really wanting to celebrate people's successes and be a part of that, they will just be attracted to you, and they'll be happy to refer you too.
Yeah.
Referrals are the best.
They are. So thinking about now, say you're clear on what you want to do, and say you're looking towards pointing the ship on scaling. Mm-hmm. Let's just go over a few practical things today of some checklist items of, let's make sure there's no cracks in the foundation before we start to scale. So let's go back to the call that I had earlier this week, and the couple wanted to scale, and their situation was they had a local admin doing some client acquisition. So they were doing the Instagram method, and also they were emailing for some outreach. And primarily the husband was doing most of the shooting and the wife was coordinating. So that's what the team looked like. And they wanted to scale, and they had a contact in a city a few hours away. And this contact would be really good, creative, could do the job of real estate photography, and wanted to think about the viability of starting there. And so I was like, okay, that's fabulous. Love the idea of scaling. That's kind of how we scaled. We went to adjacent cities. The thing that I want you to check is just the foundation at this point. So what is your market share? And this was a number that they didn't know off the top of their head. They had guessed they were in a smaller market, I think a market of around 150,000 people in the greater market. And that's about an hour north and south. So that's a pretty large market. So not an incredibly dense population. And they thought they were maybe doing 40% market share. And so I just encouraged them to actually find out that number. So breaking that down for you all, what the market share is, if you're going, hey, what's this market share number? The market share is basically the percentage of new listings in a period. So for 1 month that you are getting jobs for, that you're shooting. So if the total market has 100 new listings and you did 10 of them, you have a 10% market share. So one figure that you have is the number of shoots. You know that already. That's inside of Spiro. Go down to metrics, and that is displayed for you right there. So you'll see the number of shoots this month to date and this year to date. And then you can go back and see any period. But the number that's a little bit tricky to get, that we can't automatically give you, is the number of total new listings. So that's how many homeowners list their house in your market each month. And we have found out that you can find this a couple different places. We have most luck with getting that number from the local board of realtors. This is a public number that they typically publish in a monthly newsletter, and they take all of the data. And we find that is a pretty good source of truth to get that total new listing number. One thing that I would just encourage you to do is, whatever source you find this number with, always go back to that source. You don't want to pick the local board 1 month and then count new listings on realtor.com or Zillow the next, and then ask a realtor the month after that, because all of those sources might be looking at different data points. And, what do they consider a expired listing that comes back on? Is the coming soon and a new listing, how is that viewed in the market? Is that 2? Is that 1 listing? Things like that. So make sure you use the same data source. The tough thing about this is that it's a trailing number. Meaning if you go, whoever you get this from, it's going to be a month, 2 or 3, or in the case of if you're in a small city like us in one of our markets in Lima, it's like 8 months behind. So,
Yeah.
so this is a number that you need to get, and you need to find one source and be consistent with it. This individual that I talked to on the call, heck, he was a realtor. So he had access to this in the MLS. If you know a realtor, this is numbers that they have. Their managers or brokers probably share them with this on a weekly level, and they have access to the data much quicker than what we have found that the local board will post. So you get that total number of listings number, and then you just divide the listings you've done by that, or vice versa. And we will do that for you in Spiro. So in the metrics section, go to settings, and you'll see in that settings that there's a market share number. Input the total number of new listings in that market, and then your dashboard will update and it will show you your market share. And this is a percentage number. So this is the percent of the market that you own. So that's the first thing, is understanding, is there growth potential where I'm at? Now, in most of our markets that we're in, I think we have a blended market share percentage of, I think, almost 9%, a little less than 10%. So if you think about that, and we're in some fairly large markets, some really large markets, but there is an incredible amount of potential in those markets that we are all in. And I'm not quite sure what the outcome was of this couple I talked to find the market share in their percentage. I just guess that it was lower than 40%, because I think we've talked to all the realtors and we've checked every angle, but there is a ton of potential out there. Even Craig, in the market you've been there many years as C and now with Wow. Mm-hmm. I mean, what type of potential are you finding every day?
There's still plenty. There's still plenty. I think the last 2 years, our market share up here has grown, I think, close to 2%. And I always get down on myself about numbers. In the number of daily shoots, I tend to focus too much into the nitty gritty details. But if I look at the bigger picture, the market share is growing. So it's like, Steve and Chris, Craig, you're doing okay. Look at the big picture. You're growing. Keep doing what you're doing. So yeah, that market share number is huge.
And the thing to remember about a market share number is you only have to grow it a little bit, and that's a lot of new listings. Because if your board had 200-300 listings in your market that month, and some of you are in areas that they're much more than that, you grow a small percentage of that, and that's a big number. So that one can kind of fool you a little bit, because it's 2%. Like, no, that was a lot of shoots.
Yeah, here's where my perspective got off. So when I was my own business, I had shot just over 1,000 listings in a calendar year, and I was like, "That's amazing!" And it was pretty good. I was very happy, but I never looked at my market share at that point. I didn't know the number of total listings. I was just looking at the number of jobs I had shot. Now you look at this year, and the number of jobs shot is actually less than that. And so I'm comparing number of jobs shot from, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, when the market was completely different to where it is today. And I'm willing to bet that the market share that we have today in my market is probably higher than when I was running things on my own, and it was a completely different market. It was pre-COVID, things were just different. So you can't look at, yes, your number of jobs is going to go up and down, but look at the bigger picture, because when things bounce back, your number of jobs is probably going to shoot back up.
It is. And the thing that you can't control as a real estate photographer, no matter how hard you try, you cannot control how many new listings come on the market. It is out of your control. So like Craig mentioned, pre-COVID and the height of COVID, when number of new listings rocketed up, and then it ramped down, you had no control over that yo-yo of a market. But you can control your market share. That's a consistent number based on the total number of listings.
Yep.
So that's an extremely important number that tells you the true health of your business. Another number is your average order value. Those are numbers that are under your control. That's a number that we look at very heavily at WOW. It's also on your dashboard. It's in the top row. We put all these in the top row because they're the most important, or in your metrics dashboard, excuse me. And your average order value is the average price of your orders that an agent will place. So it sums up the total revenue, divides it by the number of orders. And on average, your average order value is $250, $150, $300, $1,000. But that is a number that's under your control. And it's under your control because you can educate your clients. You can help them understand why they need to order more, how they will use that service. So that is something that you can affect. And Craig, I would say that that is one of the reasons why you're having a lot of these meetings right now is, and you mentioned with the new agent, you're educating.
Yeah, it's funny, the last few weeks, it seems like I've had a lot more photo only jobs, and I'm realizing, education, I need to tell them the why of video. The economy is challenging right now. We understand inflation is a thing. You're tempted to spend less, but when you spend less, you get into this vicious cycle of your business just starting to spiral downwards. Now, when economies are down, when things are down, I believe, but maybe it's because I've worked in the marketing and sales and advertising industry for so long, is when the economy is starting to spiral down, that's when you need to double down on your marketing and your advertising and the tools that help get your name out there. Because when everybody else is wanting to spend less, and thus their name is not out there as much, the realtors that spend less, their face isn't out there, their presence isn't out there. The realtors that do invest, they're going to pick up more market share because they've doubled down on their marketing and advertising. So that's part of why I'm wanting to concentrate more on education, especially over the next few months when things are slower, and really encourage people, think about the economic cycle and market share. What can you do to be front of mind, when somebody does finally go to list their home? What tools are you investing in beyond the next realtor? I had a shoot yesterday, Todd, where the sellers were home, and I told them, I said, you made a great choice in choosing this realtor. I said, I've worked with her for quite a few years now. She really does go above and beyond in the marketing that she does for you. And she had ordered photos, video, drone, and a floor plan. I mean, she did 4 different things. And the husband keyed up. He said, above and beyond. That's what we picked up from her, because we interviewed several agents, and she did. She offered more and really set herself apart from these other agents. And that's why we chose her. I said, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a story I can tell other realtors.
Yeah. Yeah. And that resonates with them because remember, realtors track their market share too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they track their average list value. Just like you track your average order value, they track their average listing value. So on average, do they list a $200,000 house, a $400,000 house? They want that to go higher. Commission's higher, just like you want your average order value to go higher because the profit's higher.
Right.
So the first thing is you need to figure out your market share. So if you're thinking about expansion, how do I go? Where do I go? You got to figure out where you're at right now. If you don't know where you're at, please do not try to go somewhere else. I've tried it. It can get painful and costly. You got to know where you're at. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you have to figure out how you can take market share from your competition. So this couple happened to share with me that they had this local admin and she was a college student, and they got really lucky with this college student, and she was doing some of the client acquisition. And I suggested that this husband and wife needed to take back over the client acquisition. And they were completely open to that. It's just, you have to understand all of your skills out there. Everybody has skills. And I'm generalizing here in the group of real estate photographers, but I'd say as more creative people, we tend to be potentially a little more introverted, creative. And with your thoughts, you're creating, you are happy when you're creating. and it's out of your comfort zone to go into somewhat sales mode. You're like, ugh, sales. But you are the face of your business. Just like we at WOW tell our agents your face is your brand. Right now at your company, your face is your brand.
Yeah.
Okay, now we will pivot. As you grow, you'll pivot out of that. So I at WOW was the face of the company for many years, and I've put people in place of me now. Craig is the face in his market, and Pam and Chris and Steve and Joy. And they know Jess and Brittany and all the people on our team. But that's okay to know that that's your goal, but you have to use your current time and place and the features and benefits of working with you to your advantage right now. If you're a small team, if it's you and your wife, you need to use that, and you need to sell the fact that it's just us. We're taking care of you. This is how we're doing. And then when you expand your team, you sell that. Hey, we're here to serve you. We're growing the team to better serve you. So it's just a little bit switch of a narrative at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I challenged this couple. I said, you guys have to figure out how you take market share from that competition. They had one competitor in the market that they heard the most, and they felt like they had a pretty good business going. And it was tough. They're like, oh, they're so loyal to this person. It's just, we call their agents and they're like, oh, we're just really loyal to this photographer. I'm like, okay, well, that's okay. We know where we're at. Mm-hmm. You have a decent business that you need to compete with, and that's okay. Competition is great, but you have to figure out how you take market share away from this photographer. And if you go back, and we won't go into, I mean, there's a million ways you can begin to do this. But what I would suggest is you look at where your strengths are at with connecting with people. So as Craig has shared before, he does incredible with one-on-one small meetings, and he can build those relationships and he can grow them. Like we've shared before, is the kind of the opposite is Joy in our Charlotte market. She holds these huge events. She puts them together like it would take me a year to put one together. She's like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to do it next Tuesday. I'm like, wait a minute, it's Thursday.
How?
Yeah. And she gets 100 people there, and she has speakers and presenters and giveaways, and she arranges this whole thing.
Yeah.
So you really have to look at where you're strong, and don't feel pressure of how Craig or I would do it. Just find where you're comfortable. Go a little bit above that. Go a little bit outside of that, because being uncomfortable is good. Push yourself. And I pushed them. I mean, this husband and wife team happened to be, they were gymnasts and like collegiate gymnasts. I'm like, holy crap. I'd be doing flips or handstands everywhere. Like literally, I don't know. I would, everybody be knowing that I'm 6'7". I can barely do a somersault. And that's a silly example, but I want you to understand you have so many talents and values and things that are valuable. If you have an abundance or a scarcity mindset, abundance, you probably realize that scarcity, you're like, I don't know that I can beat that competition. Well, I'm here to tell you today that you can, and you can do it. Just believe in yourself, change the mindset, find out where someone has complimented you, and just keep doing that a little bit more.
Yeah. I would go as far as to say, I don't even, I try not to focus on the competition that much. I just, if somebody is working with, company X and I'm company Y over here, and they tell me, yeah, I'm already working with so-and-so, great. If you ever need a backup, I'm here to serve. And I just stay in touch with that person. And, I might have a client that works with them in the same brokerage, and, ask that client of mine to maybe refer me once in a while to the other person. Mm-hmm. But I just do the best job I can. And again, that referral goes a long way, because at some point another company, and we're guilty of this ourselves, where we might have a mess up, and that agent then remembers you, and well, I'm going to give them a shot. Don't worry too much about the competition is what I would say.
Craig, is that easy?
No. No,
yeah.
Heck no. Because like when I first started my business, I really didn't have a ton of competition. I mean, there were photographers doing real estate, but there was no large companies. When I stepped away from it for a year and a half and then came back, I suddenly had like 3 major companies in my market that were not there when I was previously.
I remember those phone calls with you, Craig.
Yeah, I'm like,
You would call me, you'd say the company name, like, oh no, this one's going to be a real one.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah, I was scared to death. I'm like, how am I going to rebuild this with these big companies that do what we do? Yeah. And I had to get myself out of that type of thinking and just go back to playing to my strengths. And who did God create me to be? Who is Craig? Why did my clients work with me to begin with? And I got back out there, and lo and behold, business started growing again. And we're doing okay, We're doing okay.
Yeah, we're growing a market share. We're growing. I mean, it's been a fabulous year. So
yeah, very thankful.
So we hope you found some nuggets in this today. I had my next pillar, or my next foundation builder, was talking about financials, but we can get to that in a following podcast. But I do want you to find out what your market share is. This is a fabulous time. It's getting to be the end of the year. What did you do this year? Where are you at? You have to know that. You have to know that. I cannot stress that enough. And then you have to figure out, where do you have some gaps? How can you grow that market share?
Foundations to scaling. Take care of the very first layer. I'm on a 3D printing kick right now with my youngest son. Yeah. And in 3D printing, the first layer that your printer puts down, that first layer of melted plastic on the print bed, is the most important layer of the entire print. If you don't get that first layer down evenly, melted correctly, sticking to the bed, any subsequent layers after that are going to be all screwed up. It's the same thing with our business. If you don't get that foundation laid down solidly in a healthy way, nothing else you build on top of it is ultimately going to survive. It's going to crumble. Foundations.
Yeah. Well said.
Yep. Cool. Boy, I didn't realize this much time had gone by already, Todd, but some good stuff this week. And thanks for the insight in the story of this couple that you talked with. And
thank you for sharing. I think it's important that we all examine these things in our lives, and they're not always the easiest to think about. That time in the morning when it's just you. It's like, oh, do I really want to think about where I'm at? Sometimes we run away from it because we're either a little bit in the dark as to where we're at, or we're not happy with where we're at. But understanding it is the first step. And, the amount of focus that you have will determine the amount of success that you have.
There you go. Just remember, though, with all that intense focus on your business, when you punch out for the day and you go home to your family or your loved ones or whatever, turn the switch off. Be present for the ones that you love. I know it's tempting to be continually thinking about your business and what you need to do the next day, but flip that switch off. Be present for the people in your life. Okay? Awesome.
Now turn us off and go be with your family.
Right. There you go. There you go. Hey, guys, thanks for tuning in another week, listening, watching on YouTube, wherever it is that you're picking up this podcast. We really do appreciate you. If you found value in it, we ask you, please, send us a like, share it, mention the podcast in the online groups and whatnot. That just helps us be hopefully bring some value to more real estate photography businesses in this industry, and really be a part of helping you grow and have a successful business and life. Guys, take a breath, enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for the Spiro Podcast, Managing Your Real Estate Photography and Videography Business. This is a production of Spiro and Wow Video Tours. You can find out more about Spiro's real estate media business management software at our website, spiro.media.